I wanted to read The Hobbit as a kid, but it was too difficult for me because English was my second language, and I was still learning to read and speak English in the '70s. And then I would try. The teacher said you would love this book, and she gave me a copy of The Hobbit. I could never finish reading it because I found
I read it when I was pretty young. I don't remember how old I was.
Yeah,
I know that I think I read Lord of the Rings. I was like in 6th grade, and I think I read The Hobbit before that.
No, I tried to read it. Just my English proficiency at that time wasn't enough for me to be able to get through it. So I'm now, because of that, I just could never finish any of the Lord of the Rings books. I just got so bored with it. Because,
well, The Hobbit's easier to read.
Yeah, because by the time I was old enough by the time I mastered the English language, I was no longer interested in the subject. You know what I mean? So I never.
The Narnia books are a little bit easier to read.
Yeah, I like I think that's one of my first books I was reading, the Narnia books. I was able to I didn't start reading at a grade level of my own until the 6th grade. So so that's a long time. It takes time to learn the English language to a proficiency level.
I was reading I was in 3rd or 4th grade. I was reading H.G. Wells and Sherlock Holmes.
Me too. That's actually, once it hits, it was, that's my memory. Once it hits, it's like an atom bomb, which is like a switch on and off. It's not like a gradual thing. It's like I just remember, boom, I could read these really complex things now. And once I figured out the English language and I was just reading all the Jules Verne's, I was reading Sherlock Holmes, I was reading Encyclopedia Britannica cover to cover. It was like a world opened up to me. And I became a reader, but by that time I wasn't interested in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or anything like that. I was deep into Heinlein and Jerry Pournelle.
I read them later, when I was in high school.
Yeah, but I was reading it once 6th grade happens, and then 7th grade and 7th through high school, I was just reading really deep science fiction shit like that because it opened up a world. One of my
favorites is Frank Herbert.
Yes. Mine too.
He wrote the Dune series, but he also wrote a bunch of other science fiction books. They're really good.
The Dune movie, I don't know if it's a movie or a miniseries or whatever. I think it's a movie. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, I'm skeptical of anything new, but I've heard good things.
Yeah, one of the things about having to resort to a source material is they can't woke it up too much. You know what I mean?
They can, but they ruin it. But maybe it'll be pretty good. I don't know.
Yeah, I think.
But it is possible to take something with good material and ruin it, though.
Of course, that's always possible. But I think with Dune, the family that owns the Dune, they can't Lord of the Rings. They couldn't have one female in there because that would be, as much as they would love to have a female as part of the band of brothers or whatever the fuck they were. The circle of the ring.
There was some character that killed somebody because it's a no man could kill him and then a woman kills him or something.
Yeah,
that might have been in the book. I don't remember. I think they might have changed some slight thing to make it more feminist. It wasn't a huge deal. I don't remember that.
I think that character was given more material in the movie, the female.
Yeah, probably. I think they just did a little bit, some minor wokening, which I don't think it's a big deal. It's when they give a whole woke overhaul that sucks.
Yeah, so I think the Dune is not doing that because it's because what happens in Dune is so far removed from humanity. Like Star Trek, they fucking ruined modern Star Trek with the woke shit because it's set in the Earth world, Earth future. Dune is set in such a different universe that none of the stuff that we're doing here makes any sort of. There's no reference point, There's no need for a strong female.
If they wanted to, they get some woke writers to ruin it. It's possible.
Yeah, I think they're not doing it. Keep fingers crossed that they won't do it. But yeah, I'm a big Dune Herbert. One of my favorite pleasures in New York, it still exists, but it's not in the same place anymore. Was a comic book / sci-fi only bookstore called Forbidden Planet. It wasn't like Barnes and Nobles where they sold all types of books. This one specialized only in science fiction and fantasy. And to me, it was sort of like a paradise on earth. You walk through it and you have all these even books you never even heard of. If I can recommend a book by Jerry Pournelle, The Mote in God's Eye.
Jerry Pournelle.
Yeah,
Jerry Pournelle.
He passed away in 2017, but he was a really good sci-fi writer because I think he worked for NASA, and he had a nice sort of like he grounded his science fiction into sort of reality with a nice fantasy element to it. I always liked his work too. So that was my sort of like when sixth grade hit and I could master the English language, that's when it opened up my vista.
Brother Hashem thinks Earth still exists in Dune universe. He thought, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I
think it
always
might. I read the books, but it was a long time ago. I think it doesn't take place on Earth, but I think it might exist in the same universe.
Yeah, brother. What I meant is it's not
central.
Yeah, it's not Earth centric. It's just one of like it may have been part of humanity a million years ago. I don't think.
Yeah, I think it probably exists in that universe, but it's not important to what's going on.
Yeah, it's sort of like ancient history for these people. So Star Trek, it's supposed to be only a few hundred years into the future.
Yeah, so Earth is highly relevant to Star Trek.
Yeah, and but there, it's so far into the future. It might as well be us talking about Mycenae or the Trojan War or something. That's how far removed Earth is from the. And they're not even human anymore because of the spice. The spice has mutated them to the point where they're barely identifiable as humans are today. So it's a totally different level.
There were a lot of clones in it too. I haven't read it in a long time. There was like one character that they kept on cloning him.
Yeah, I remember that. So to me, it was sort of like they're not even they're sort of human,
like the God Emperor is like a giant worm man or something.
No, I thought the giant worm man were the pilots or something, like the pilot guild or something, and
there was like the original character from the first book, but then I think one of them was called like a God Emperor, which they use like a meme about Trump. But it's like a descendant of his, but he's like turned it. He's like he has human consciousness, but he's like a giant worm or something.
Maybe you know what I'm going to have to. I still have the books.
I haven't read him in a long time.
I haven't read him in 20 years, so I'm going to go back and read him because I like forgetting what I read, and then going back and.
No, there's like some sort of sentient worm that's like a descendant of the character from the first book, I think.
Oh, I didn't
know.
If that's the case, I totally forgot about it.
That's wild, weird stuff.
Well, you know what that means? That means I could go back and read it again. It's going to be brand new to me.
I haven't read it in a long time either. So
yeah, so I'm going to go back and read it. I have the books. Might as well read them. I read them. I haven't read them since like 1986 or something. So 1990s, I think.
Brother Hashem says, God Emperor Doom was a human spice worm.
Yeah, I remember something about, but I just assumed it was anyone who took so much spice would become some sort of.
No, weird. I don't think everybody was mutated, but so there was the God Emperor. It was like a worm person, and there was like a character that they kept on cloning the same guy, and he knew that he was a clone. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah,
but I don't think everybody was like a freak though. I think.
No,
I relatively normal.
I just assumed because if you take enough spice, your eyes turn blue, and there was a lot of people who had blue eyes, and it was.
Well, that's not a crazy mutation like being a giant worm, though.
Right, it's not. I just felt that they were one level above humans at some point for some reason, or they weren't exactly. They're so far into the future that there might as well be a different version of Homo sapiens. Was what I was thinking as a kid. Maybe I'm.
There were a lot of other crazy books by Frank Herbert too.
Yeah, he was actually. You know what's funny about him? He was actually a failed writer, and then everyone rejected Dune until somebody accepted it, and then it just took off. I think if I'm remembering correctly, which is what fascinated me about her. I like that. He was an out of the box thinker, and and somebody took him up on that. So that always appealed to me for some reason, for him being an art, as an artist, as a writer.
It would be good. I mean, so. I've said before that I think pretty much else. I'm skeptical of mainstream entertainment at this point.
Me too.
But if they did a decent job and didn't ruin it or anything, they could adapt other stuff that had other Frank Herbert books that weren't related to Dune. Some of them were brilliant. I thought there's a bunch of different things.
Yeah. I joke, Lenin. I joke that you're my soulmate sometimes, and I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. But what you believe is something I've been thinking about for the long time. I think on Twitter I mentioned it, or on Gab, where because I was a reader, I noticed that there was a shift in what was being written by new artists, by new writers. Like sometime in the 1990s or the 2000s, like brand new writers who write science fiction or whatever. It's fucking horrible, and they use different vocabulary, and it doesn't seem like they know what they're doing.
Like my
You know what I
favorite
mean?
author is Philip K. Dick, and they've done a lot of adaptations of him. But like Frank Herbert, they barely scratched the
David.
surface.
Yeah,
They've done
sorry.
like Dune, but he wrote a ton of other stuff. Plus,
Yeah.
the Dune series is pretty long.
Yeah, something happened in writing. It's something. If you read, I like reading a lot
Frank
of
Herbert
old
is
shit.
more accessible, I think. Philip K. Dick can be a little crazy.
You mentioned Jules Verne, right? When you
No,
read
you
something-
mentioned him.
Oh,
I'm
when you
actually
read-
not a huge fan. He's kind of like a contemporary H.G. Wells.
Well, if you read H.G. Wells and Jules Verne's, you understand that there's a certain way of writing that was at the turn of the century, like the 1800s,
Yeah.
right? Right, and then in the 1900s, H.P. Lovecraft, there's a certain way of writing. Howard, who did Conan the Barbarian, there's a certain way of writing. The guy who did Tarzan, there's a certain way of writing. Tarzan and Nick Carter from Mars. There's every decade.
Nick Carter from Mars.
Did I say Nick Carter's?
What was his name? John Carter from
John
Mars.
Carter from Mars. Sorry about
Jimmy Carter from Mars.
that. John
Hey-o.
Carter.
That's
So-
Edgar Rice Burroughs.